I've been thinking about very little else other than this coronavirus situation. And like a lot of Americans, thinking about how can I help a little bit. And, I've been in this business studying effective leaders and workforces for a long time now. In fact, this is my third crisis. My first one was 9/11. And I wanted to share a story from that time because I think it may be more relevant maybe than it ever has been. Right before 9/11, we were working with a major airline, one of the big ones, one of the ones we count on. And we had a great big entire company employee survey just ready to go into the field when 9/11 happened. They'd already communicated to their people about how badly they wanted their feedback. They really need to know what they were thinking, and they asked them to participate several times, and people were expecting it. When 9/11 occurred, they pulled the plug. Now, it wasn't really negotiable. We didn't have anything to say about it. It just happened. So we tried to be understanding. Now, fast forward a month or two until we all started to go back to life under the new normal, and I started flying again. And I was flying on that airline on a long flight, and I had a layover in one of their major hubs, and like I normally do, I went to the club room. I had another reason to go to the club room. I was stuck in a middle seat, and I wanted to change. So I went up to the agent and asked if I could change, and she looked, and she said, well, as a matter of fact, there's an aisle seat in an exit row that's available. And I said, that's perfect. But she said, I can't make that change here. You'll have to ask the agent. So I went to the gate a little sooner than normal. And as I walked up to the agent, he didn't look like a happy man. But I went up and I said, I'd like to change to a better seat if I could. And he said, there aren't any better seats available. Well, I knew better, so I told him the number of the seat that I would like to be changed to. He shot back, I've already looked, and anyway, I'm too busy. Well, I didn't want to let it go at that point. So I said, sir, I'm a high mileage frequent flyer and a really good customer. Can maybe you help me out? And what he said, I will never forget as long as I live. He said, yeah, you're a customer of this airline, and I'm an employee, and nobody cares about me, so why should I care about you? Now, the reason I remember that word for word is because I told that story so many times. I used him as an example of a truly disgruntled employee. He was that angry at his airline. Now, was that a coincidence? Because during that time period, I have a lot of friends who fly a lot. And I never remember a time when I heard so many horror stories about terrible customer experiences on the airlines, and that one in particular. And I started to formulate a little theory. I thought, well, maybe when your employees feel more scared and worried and confused than ever, maybe that's not the time to communicate to them that you don't need to hear from them. And maybe if you do that, there will be long-term consequences. Now, my little theory was validated during the crisis of 2008. Now, at that point in time, we were working with a lot of companies, and they reacted in many, many diverse ways, okay? We had some clients who, once again, pulled the plug and canceled the planned process. Now, and what we learned later is they suffered a big hit in terms of the level of engagement and commitment of their people. And it took them longer to bounce back when the crisis was over. Now, we had other clients who went ahead as planned, and they didn't suffer that hit. But more importantly, there were some people who used that opportunity to say to their employees, you know what, we need to hear from you now more than we have ever needed that. We need to know what you're thinking. And then when they got the data, they used the analyzed information to refine their message, to make more appropriate plans than they could have made without that information. So now, when we hear our clients talking about what to do in terms of their process, we're pretty cautionary because we hear people saying things like, well, yeah, we already know our people are worried, our people are confused, we have to make a plan and we have to respond to that. We already know that. Well, then the question that needs to be asked is, do you really know as much as you think you know about what's going on with your employees? Because a lot of times we have a tendency to project. We have a tendency to assume that everybody's thinking what we're thinking. And guess what? That's never right. I mean, we learned that different groups of people have so many different ways of responding and so many different needs that emerge during a crisis. And how do you know about those until you really make an effort to learn? Now, so just for some examples, for some people during this type of a situation, they just really need to know that they're getting the straight truth. They need to know that their leaders are honest and transparent, and that has to be emphasized during the messaging, during the communication, or they won't be on board. Now, for others, there are people in your organization that maybe feel for their group there's been a breach of trust in the past, and they won't get back on board until that breach has been dealt with. And that's what needs to be emphasized the most. And some of us, we just need to be reminded about the importance of the work that we're doing. Who needs us now? Who wins if we win? Who gets hurt if we fail? And with that sense of purpose, they're willing to forge ahead, more motivated than ever. Now, still others, it feels kind of lonely right now, and they just need to be reassured that they're not in this alone, that we're doing this together. We've got each other's backs, and we're arm in arm, and then they're willing to march forward. They're on board again. And then there's those groups of people who are particularly values-oriented. And for them, there's never been a better time for leaders to step up and articulate core values that resonate, and then demonstrate how those values are reflected in their decisions and commitments and actions. And when you do that, they will never be more committed than they are at that point in time. So from those and many other possibilities, which is most on target for your people? How do you know unless you ask? And I can tell you, there has never been a more important time in history for leaders to grab the wheel, step up to the helm, step up to the plate, grab the bull by the horns, however you want to say it. There has never been a better time in your career for you to have more impact than you can have right now. People are that hungry. But how do you know what to do it until you listen, and listen more carefully than you have ever listened before? At WSA, we believe that we, with the talent and experience that we have accumulated over the past few years, we are the best in the world at helping you listen more carefully than you have ever listened before. And we're here to help if you need us. WorkforceScience.com. Thank you for listening.